everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. This week's show is on the myths of critical race theory, and we have an amazing panel of perspectives. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, register with StreamYard so I can see your name when you ask questions or comments. Otherwise, you're just going to be a Facebook user. Please keep all comments and questions related to the show, and remember, this is a safe space. I want to give a shout out. Where'd my screen go? There we go. I want to give a shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, Heidi. You guys rock. Thank you so much for enabling this show to go on and supporting it every week. If you enjoy the show, you can go to sherrypalace.com and it's all there. I've got shirts, I've got membership options, and you can actually join our VIP where you can talk to the panel live on camera after the show each week. It's only like $3 a month, so less than a cup of coffee. And I appreciate your support, and it keeps me going. But thank you so much for just in allowing us to come into your house tonight and have this conversation. You support me, so thank you. Okay, enough housekeeping. Before I bring on the panel for this very tough topic that I scheduled for this week, I want to establish a few things. There is a lot of rhetoric around the Republicans are the party of Lincoln who freed the slaves while the Dems supported slavery. And the usual response is, yeah, I know, but the parties flipped during the Civil Rights Movement, right? But it goes deeper than that. It wasn't that the parties flipped. It was the conservatives moved. The conservative South was originally the Confederates. When the Civil Rights Movement started gaining momentum, the conservatives moved their support to the Republicans. And the grand old party, the GOP, was formed. Imagine it. The Southerners were pissed and they approached the Republicans saying, hey, your platform is law and order. You know what would establish that? Controlling those blacks. But unfortunately, I'm sure they didn't use that word. Then came the 13th Amendment and private prisons, turning convicts into enslaved labor. So this is why the GOP tends to completely dismiss the law when it's applied to them. It was meant for people of color. Now, their propagandists cloak themselves in false patriotic names like the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a top proponent and funder in banning CRT education. They call themselves a far-right think tank. I won't share their video, but it is #1 under myths of CRT on YouTube. So if you care to see it, you can just do a simple search. It was truly mind-blowing bullshit. A few of their myths, I won't even waste the time of our brilliant panel, but these things need to be addressed because so many are hearing it. First of all, if you think inclusion and diversity education should be banned, you're a supremacist. I initially had white supremacist on there, but in religion and politics, there usually tends to be a group of anyone who thinks that they are superior. Fighting inclusion and diversity, someone thinks that they're superior. In our country, it tends to be white supremacists and the white people. CRT is not Marxism or communism. Marxism and communism are both economic philosophies, not social equality. The video also expresses a desire to ban civics classes, claiming it's indoctrination. Ignorance, which is a lack of education, is exactly why we are in this mess. And I need to have multiple shows to talk about this topic, evidently. Okay, so let's bring on my fabulous panel to address the myth about CRT. First, we have, let me go ahead and remove that. Curtis B. Scruggs is a decorated Army veteran and single father. He is currently the COO of the East Cleveland Growth Association. Curtis has 2 bachelor's degrees in paralegal education and public administration and 2 masters, an MBA and a master's in finance. He has been involved in the community relations since 2006 when he left the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department. He's also back for like the 3rd time on the show, so give him a big welcome. Hello, Curtis.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. Next, we have Cami Beck. She is a 45-year-old Black woman who loves history, good food and wine, traveling, and interesting conversation. But she doesn't like conspiracy theories. Cami leads a Facebook group called Critical Race Theory, attempting to educate others on the topic, as well as inequality, unknown facts of Black history, and the accomplishments of Black people, including building this country. Give Cam a big welcome.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And last, but definitely not least, we have Tu Francis. He is a tenured professor, scholar, public speaker, active musician, and family man. His research interests focus on teacher certification, education program development, and building partnerships with in-service teachers. His speaking and musical efforts focus on helping churches and other organizations raise money for philanthropic causes. Welcome back, Tu.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
So I know I came out swinging for the opening of the show. I sent the video to you guys because I wanted to, I guess a part of my humanity wanted to share the pain, but when I saw the whole thing, I really regretted doing so. So the atrocities, let's start with the Marxism thing, if you guys don't mind. Curtis, is communism and Marxism the same thing as CRT?
Absolutely not. I think one of the big myths around critical race theory, people don't know what it is, so they ascribe a laundry list of white grievances to critical race theory. Critical race theory is a legal concept. It's a legal construct that was developed in the 70s by academics led by Kimberly Crenshaw, actually. And it talks about the intersectionality between American public law and race. One of the tenets of critical race theory is that race is a social construct and it doesn't have any biological entity at all.
That was actually one of the things that he said, was that if in fact we were to love our neighbors, then they should be silent and not bring this up because it's divisive. And it was like,
right.
Okay, you guys are the ones saying we shouldn't be talking about this, and now you're saying you're being silenced?
Right.
Toof, you're seeing this in the education system. What's going on there? Give us the ins and outs of this.
Yeah, thank you. So to me, right now, this is where these villains have chosen to battle this, is in the schools, in the classroom. It's an election year, but I think more than the election year, I think the generation of the anti-communist generation is very much afraid because their children, these next generations coming up, aren't falling for it anymore. And so I think their whole plan, the villain's plan, is to go to the schools, stop it at the schools, because the next generation is becoming less racist, more LGBTQ friendly, more open to other cultures. And this is like the racist nightmare. This is that generation's nightmare. And so they just call up these words like communist and socialist. I mean, I've been going to board meetings for surrounding districts, and just to watch these parents, they've lost their mind. They've lost their mind, screaming at the board members and recording teachers and trying to get them fired. It's terrifying for teachers.
I thought it was really interesting that he ended the video with saying that CRT is actually racist, and then with a call to action to join the school boards, to go into the voting places. It was, you need to fight this. So it was all of this rhetoric, all of this bullshit, all of this fear, saying that, he literally opens the video saying that inclusion and diversity is the problem. Like, I'm sorry, only white supremacists say that. It's the most asinine thing ever. And then to get these people worked up and then to have a call to action was terrifying.
Ignoring the fact that no school district, primary or secondary, teaches critical race theory. Critical race theory is not taught in any. There is no school district, primary or secondary, in the United States of America or any other country where critical race theory is taught. Critical race theory is a legal academic. It's a legal academic course that's taught in law school.
Part of the problem with that argument is that they're claiming, like the math books in Florida, that because it had some type of inclusion or diversity, that's actually CRT. So now they're giving a full different definition, a full class, and saying, well, everything talking about race, everything talking about diversity should be banned.
And that's the problem. And then now they're going to the libraries and they're banning books that are read in English class, which is considered classic literature. And I'm kind of like, what? I mean, they don't want to, like, the Diary of Anne Frank. They don't want that in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, excuse me. I mean, it's just like they want to ban books, and then they're just making up stuff. And it's getting to the point there, like, they probably don't even want to talk about segregation, Jim Crow, civil rights movement, or slavery. And I'm just like, this is U.S. history. Yeah. I mean, this is facts. This is United States history. And if you want to understand the whole part of the United States, you got to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly of history of this country. And I don't know what people are, afraid of, because to me, I started noticing, like, as older as I got, but then, like, the last 4 years, and then during COVID, and then with the shooting of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and this would be my first experience of a racial reckoning, and what my grandparents went through, and my mom went through, and what they were talking about. And I was like, oh. And so when New York Times published the 1619, 1619 publication, basically it's a comprehensive guide of how this country was built on the back of slaves. Mm-hmm. And some school districts are using it as kind of like a guide along with United States history, which I thought was good. And now parents are just going crazy over it and getting mad about it. I was like, what's all the hoopla? It's part of history.
We white people have been doing this for a really long time now. I mean, we massacred Indians, Native Americans, rather, and then put them on TV as the bad guys, and Cowboys and Indians, and John Wayne, and Tonto, and what was it? I'm really showing my age right now. But all of these things, and then we romanticized that they were our partners in Thanksgiving rituals when we slaughtered them for 100 years. So white people have been trying to erase their history forever, which is why it's his story, as opposed to, and the winners always make the history, right? Mm-hmm. So because they've gotten away with it so long, it's just more of that. It's just more perpetuating it. The Civil War was not fought over slavery, according to them. And what cracked me up about the whole law and order thing is when they were fighting for states' rights, the law meant nothing. So when they were the Confederates, the law meant nothing. And then when they moved over into and formed the GOP, all of a sudden the law meant everything, as long as they could inflict it on other people and not themselves. They've always the law.
Democracy is the greatest thing in the world as long as they're winning. But as soon as they stop winning, they've just systematically changed the system, changing the laws, changing voter requirements, moving voting booths around, eliminating vote. They're doing things to systematically exclude people because they know that their majority is coming to an end. But as long as they can use the law and bend the law to keep power, they'll do anything. We've learned over the last 4 years how far they are willing to go to keep power.
Well, and CRT is their fear, their fear mongering at this point. If you don't follow us,
right,
all of your kids are going to hate themselves.
Right. And that's CRT CRT is the vessel in which they pour, 400 years of white grievance, into, and package it up and say, because it's easy and it's simple. The conservative movement and the Republican Party in particular, they like easy, simple messages to their followers. And CRT is an easy, simple message. See, they can point to everything, every grievance that they have and say, see, that's CRT. Never mind that I, as a black man, am seven times more likely to be convicted of a crime if I'm charged. I am 34 times more likely to be arrested for committing a crime.
And then the
sentence is 12 times more likely. I'm 12 times more likely to be sentenced to death if I'm convicted of a capital crime.
Exactly. Because you can definitely tell the difference between how a white person is sentenced versus a black person that's sentenced for the same crime.
And that's what needs to be taught. Yes. Right? That is what needs to be out there to say, look, while we have this, hi, David, how are you? While we have this dream of justice being blind and, equality under the law, it's not. The laws, the redistricting, the housing, it goes all the way down to schools and property taxes. You have predominantly a area of color that they have locked in, which contributes to the poverty, which contributes to the lack of taxes, which contributes to the lack of education. It is a pyramid of patriarchy. Yes. And then they scream and go, well, don't you tell anyone. We can't tell anyone that because it'll make you feel bad. Hitler doesn't make me feel bad. The Crusades don't make me feel bad as a person. What they do is they give me education to prevent it in the future, to acknowledge it, and to say, we're not going to allow this to happen again. Mm-hmm. So if you say that CRT is making children insecure or making them feel bad about themselves, on some level, you have to agree with what the patriarchy and the white supremacy is doing. There's just no other way around it. There really isn't. And let me just
add, we talk about the Confederacy.
It also falls into place with Black Lives not mattering.
Right.
Because if Black Lives mattered, then their stories would matter. Then their history would matter. So when someone
talked about the
Confederacy shouldn't be taught, it's because that those histories aren't supposed to matter either.
Right. Okay, you talked about the Confederacy and the Confederate monuments. Well, first of all, the Civil War was a war started by traitorous insurrectionists who seceded from the United States of America and killed Americans. Okay?
Yeah.
What country in the world erects monuments to traitorous insurrectionists who kill their citizens?
The answer to that is ones that refuse to say that they lost. And the Confederates, because they weren't held accountable, there was never we really lost. They just conceded,
Well, I think the one thing that... Oh, go ahead, Curtis. I'll go next.
No, in Mississippi, they still call it the War of Northern Aggression. Yeah. They teach that in public schools in Mississippi. They don't call it the Civil War. It is known as the War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah. Well, Mississippi is last in everything, okay?
Yeah.
So
most of to my knowledge, most of the Civil War, the statues and all this weren't built shortly after the Civil War. You know when they were built? during the civil rights
and
era.
30s.
Movement.
Yeah, 20s
Yeah,
to the
1920s
60s.
and 30s.
During
Yes,
civil rights.
absolutely.
And so as soon as Black people began to press for equality, press for power, which they, as Americans, 100% deserve, the backlash was, we're going to honor this thing we did, this war of no. And so then they were built in the 40s and 50s and 20s and 30s. Like, they were not built during the Civil War. They were not for the Civil War.
Right.
And like the Confederate flag you see now, that was not Confederate flag in the Civil War.
No.
That was just like in the 40s and 50s and 60s, but the state of South Carolina
Well,
just raised that.
the stars and bars were the stars and bars was the Confederate battle flag. It was not the flag of the Confederacy.
Right.
No, the leader of the Confederacy said, we shouldn't be honored. This needs to go away. So, CRT is just a continuation of this type of falsifying history, tainting it, literally whitewashing it. Mm-hmm. So, no one is seen as the reality that it was.
Mm-hmm. My high school, so I went to high school in Toledo, Ohio, the northernmost point of Ohio, total northern state. It was built in 1964. The school was, you know what the mascot was? The Rebels. And we used this Confederate flag. We didn't know. But I just imagine in 1964, the racist white people chose the rebels and the rebel flag to really put a middle finger towards anyone who supported Black rights. Like, even in the northernmost city. Go ahead.
Well, let me tell you this, that so my high school that I graduated from integrated in 1972, and I am born in 1976. I live in North Carolina. That school, I remember my mom helped start a riot there because their mascot was called actually it was called the Phantoms. Their mascot was a phantom, and it was like a white guy in a white sheet in a hood. And
you're gonna have the same expression. What?
I know.
Yes. And they wanted, and my mom and them wanted the mascot changed because, and it, like I said, integrated in 1972, and boom, there was a riot started because of that, and they changed the mascot to the Jets.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
I mean,
I'm glad they changed it.
Exactly. I remember going like home, when I visited my grandparents. And in the 80s, I remember, I was like, Grandma, can we go downtown? She said, no, there's a Klan march downtown.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this isn't ancient history.
No, it's not.
No.
And again, to say, spare the children is the largest crock of crap I've ever fucking heard. It's okay to bring guns into a classroom, into school, but spare the children from our racist history.
Yeah.
I just... Mm-hmm. It makes my head explode.
When this one reminds me of. So if you think about families and family dynamics, let's just make an analogy here between like families and the country and our country. When you think about a family, what healing means to a family is like when you're grown up and you sit down and you talk about the evils you've done to one another. The parents admit, they apologize, and there's reconciliation, and that's the beginning of a healthy relationship. To me, all we need to do is sit down and talk this through and open up and tell our spotted history and all of the horrible things that have happened so healing and reconciliation can occur. I can't, just ignoring these things is about the least healthy thing a family or a country can do, trying to just move on and not ever talk about it or emerge this thing. We need to heal.
This country is not ready to have that conversation, even though I think we're past ready, but no, they're not ready to have that uncomfortable conversation.
No. Let's back that up a bit, Cam. White people are not ready to have that conversation.
Yes. White people don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation. And I'm just like, it's not
because.
Well, I'm going to go off the ledge at this point and say, again, generally speaking, not all doesn't exist in our world, but white people historically don't want to work. They don't want to do the work. That's why they did slavery. That's why they had everybody else doing this. So anything that is laborious, that takes work and effort. I mean, therapy is demonized. Therapy's like the best thing on the planet. And that's demonized because of the work that's required.
Right.
So, I mean, it's beyond laziness.
Exactly. They don't want to do the work, but then they depend on us Black women trying to save the country when it comes to voting. And I'm like, it's going to get to the point we're going to be getting tired of saving the country and just let it burn down. Because y'all now don't want to do the work and been trying to tell you for at least 100 years ago how this country is.
Right. I agree that there's probably a large percentage of people who don't want to do the work and don't want to face this stuff. I think there's a small, powerful group of men, maybe women, who actually are using this to just keep power. They don't care about health. Care about anything. It is power.
True.
And it is like the Elon Musks of the world, these kind of people. These are the ones I believe are pushing this message so that white people stay in position of power and they stay even more so in a position of power.
But what did Lyndon B. Johnson say about poor white people?
Picking their pockets?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely he hit it on the head. He knew what was going on. He was a Southern Democrat. He was from Texas. And when he said, I got to look it up because I always forget that quote. I mean, but it's one of my favorite quotes that he said.
To put an even finer point on that, if you watch the movie Rosewood,
yes,
the most poignant scene in that movie is after the massacre, where the white guy is sitting on the porch with his son, and he tells his son the story of his father poisoning the mule of a black farmer who was doing better than they were. And he said that the quintessential quote from that movie was, "Son, if you ain't better than a nigger, who are you better than?"
Bingo.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's that quote. I just put the quote in the thing, Cam, if you want to read it right there.
Oh, yes.
If you're still looking for it.
If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, you give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. The GOP mastered
that. And that's
they did.
That's what's going on right now.
Yeah.
That's what's going on today. That's what's going on today.
And people can't believe that was a Democrat president, but like I said, it was during the Civil Rights era. He was a Southern Democrat. He's from Texas. And then there's two, Jesse Helms was a Democrat, and he's from my state, and he turned to a Republican in the late 60s. Strom Thurmond, and another segregationist senator in South Carolina. I mean, he was a Democrat, turned to Republican during that time, the Civil Rights era and stuff like that, because they were segregationists.
1948, we formed the Dixiecrats.
Dixiecrats, yep.
One of the things that made my head explode in the Heritage Foundation video was that they showed a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and said, "We forget about all of our success." And I started screaming at my computer going, he was fucking shot.
You shot him. He
was killed.
You shot him. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And now this whitewashing of history, everybody's like, oh, we loved MLK.
MLK wouldn't have done it this way.
But
they didn't. They didn't love MLK. They didn't love. If you read letters from a Birmingham jail, they didn't love him at all
whatsoever. I mean, and come on, even Hoover didn't like him. I mean, he had an FBI on him. I mean, seriously.
And by the way, I don't know if anyone knows this on the panel or whatever. Hoover was probably black. So there's a big theory behind that about how Hoover was actually black and a self-hater and going after all of this because he fell into the patriarchy, fell into the white patriarchy, and denied his history and his color for his entire life.
And
Cam talked about Cam talked about Strom Thurmond. Strom Thurmond has a black daughter.
Yes, he had a black daughter, but you know what? Slaves had black kids, and they were still racist. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Well, Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, and
exactly.
See, we portray the whitewashing of history portrays Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings as a love story. Well, he bought Sally Hemings when she was 14 years old.
Right.
How could that be a love story?
Yeah. She was
only 14. She was his property. Yeah, she couldn't refuse his advances. He owned her.
And even in his death, he didn't free her.
That's not a love story.
That's not love.
No, it's not.
No, he did not free her. He did not free her.
Even in his death, he did not free her. Yeah.
And she had to buy the freedom. She had to buy the freedom of their children.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other things that they were saying is that CRT is like teaching 2 + 2 = 5.
Wow.
That's the part of the video that confused me.
Yeah, but they wouldn't say where it was wrong. They just said that the CRT history is wrong, and it's equating to 2 + 2 = 5, and that CRT is actually racist because it isn't love thy neighbor; it's judge them by the color of their skin.
No.
Well, isn't that what happens if you're black?
Isn't that exactly what happens if you're black? In giant letters, projection.
Isn't that what happens if you're black? When a white man can go in a black church and shoot 9 people and be arrested without incident. When a white man can go into a Tops grocery store in Buffalo, New York, and kill 10 people and be arrested without incident. But Philando Castile, sitting in the passenger seat of his girlfriend's car after telling the officer he had a firearm.
And it was legally registered too.
Yes. Yeah, he was registered gun owner.
He was looking for his CCW when he got shot. He was looking for his concealed carry permit when he got shot.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
You know.
So you kind of wonder if
that's the
yes, Curtis.
When Breonna Taylor is sleeping in her apartment and her door is kicked in. I mean, what you know?
And the officers
explain to me how.
Which is why I opened the show with the law. They seem to think the law doesn't apply to them.
Right.
Okay, so let's address this question.
Exactly.
What we have thoroughly bitched about the GOP. We have said all the shit that they've been doing and all of this. What can the other side of the aisle do? What aren't they doing?
They aren't making it a priority.
Right.
They aren't making it a priority. Joe Biden, in his infinite wisdom, sarcasm font, folks, he and the Democrats are trying to tell us how great the economy is doing right now, which is the height of stupidity because gas is $6 a gallon and eggs are $4.99 a dozen. So, I mean, you can't tell me how great the economy is doing when those things
in regards to race relations, though, I mean, I think about John Lewis sitting on the floor of the Senate overnight trying to fight for gun reform. I think about the voting rights bill that's out there that's being stopped. There is stuff that the Democrats are trying to do,
because Chuck Schumer and the leadership in the Democrat in the Senate are inveterate cowards, and they will not eliminate the filibuster, and pass this stuff.
Yeah.
The House is passing bills weekly.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
they stall in this arcane institution where one senator out of 100 can hold up everything.
Right. Actually, two.
We haven't had. And we talk about gun violence. We talk about gun violence, and I'm going to digress here for a minute. We talk about gun violence. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has not had a director since 2015.
Wow. Oh, Curtis just froze.
Seriously?
Yeah.
And you know who's holding up the director? Who's holding Rand Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. That's it.
I mean,
he's the reason we don't have a permanent director of the ATF.
He voted against the lynching bill.
Yes, but I mean, I'm sorry. But I'm not surprised. I mean, come on, we're talking about Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell. I mean, come on here.
Kentucky.
And this is Kentucky. Okay.
I think one of the big problems all right, so I get what you're saying, Curtis. I'd like to offer a different theory, although I do understand that your theory is plausible, that they are cowards. I think that is that's one plausible, that Joe Biden and the moderates are cowards. That's one plausible theory. To me, there's also one other theory that's possible. And the problem is we live in a country, number one, where almost 50% of the population are deeply racist, deeply misogynist, straight out. And we also, they've erected a system that is resistant to change. And so the moderates, I don't know if I would call them cowards. I think what they're doing is trying to use the system, but the system, they have to water down the bills so far to get the support that they lose the teeth that they need. Because I think they are thinking, the moderates are thinking, if we try to go too progressive, we're going to lose it anyways. We're going to lose it all. We need to make we're going to work together with these people. And I think what that does is it completely disarms any bills. Plus we have two fake Democrats in the Senate that we lose the majority for anything that is progressive. Manchin and Sinema are the two people that vote with Republicans, I'm convinced, more than Democrats. I mean, I'd have to look at the record, but every major piece of legislation, those two, we've lost our majority and we can't pass anything. So I don't know if it's cowardice as much as it is our system is built by people, so it is resistant to change.
Okay, but I have a question here that has been bugging the shit out of me for the last couple months. McConnell did it. Why can't Schumer?
Because here's the thing. The right is a singular viewpoint. And the left is everyone else. Exactly. And we cannot galvanize the left because it's everyone else. And the right is lockstep. It is current modern day Nazism. It is modern day Nazism. I'm absolutely convinced.
The GOP has been playing the long game.
Oh, huge.
Yes, they have.
They've been working on Roe versus Wade for about 20 years. And it's about to be turned over.
Right.
Well, conservatism.
Actually, they've been working on it for 50 years.
Well, 50 years.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people don't understand regional politics either, because it's more like a numbers game too.
Yes.
Because I live in the South, and the politics in the South is so different what's going on in the Western California, northeast of, in New York. And because people are not needing the same things. I mean, that's why if Democrats want to win down the South, you have to be moderate. You got to be like, Manchin.
Clinton
you can't be like AOC and Bernie coming down here, and we're looking like no.
See, what cracks me up about racism, and especially this with the abortion debate, is that rich white women will continue to have abortions.
Yes.
So the people
yes, they will.
They're afraid of taking over this country, the people of color of taking over this country, their abortion ban is actually going to create more people of color that can take over this country.
And the problem, and going back to Cami's point, the problem, Cami, is simple. 30 senators, 30 United States senators represent 70% of the population of the United States.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
30
North
US
Dakota,
senators,
South Dakota.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And they're freaking out about DC. Don't add DC or Puerto Rico.
30 US senators represent 70% of the population. And that you have a problem there. You have senators, you have California, who has 40 million residents. There are 40 million residents in California. They have two senators.
Two senators. Yep.
In North Dakota, there are like 600,000 people. 600,000
senators.
Two senators.
Well,
so
then it's as well
that's
as
the problem.
So can we like
you have senators in the current sitting senators in the United States Senate today that represent more cows than people.
Yeah.
So then you kind of making
what the problem is.
Yeah, and Curtis, you kind of making an argument of get rid of the electoral college.
That's what I was going to say. That's all over that because the Senate.
I'm saying flat out get rid of the electoral college.
Yeah.
I'm saying flat. I'm saying I'm going to go further than Sherry did. I'm saying blow the damn system up.
Yeah.
Well, the Senate and the electoral college was in direct response to the 7/8 rule, right? I mean, that made the Black people not being a full human was counteracted by the Senate and the Electoral College, making sure that they never had a true voice. Well, and the EC was all over Twitter today saying the Democrats are trying to get rid of the Electoral College.
We didn't even have direct election of senators until 1913.
Right. Yep. Right.
Okay, so
we didn't even have
direct way through the show. Let's drop some more truth bombs. What's the good about CRT? What good can CRT do in our systems? Why do we need to have it out there?
Can we not call it CRT because that is a lie that the right is telling?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like they are using that as a boogeyman.
Okay.
And that because it's not, just like Curtis said, it is not CRT. That's not the thing. So I think it's what could we call it? Like real education, like understanding our history.
Right.
Yes, history. Yes.
History. Because I mean, you could see, I mean, there were laws that were just, what made to, help or advance, the Black population. And, we had redlining in the cities, because you have and now you have look in Buffalo. I mean, the only grocery store in East Buffalo was shot up by a white supremacist. And now it's a food desert. Mm-hmm. There's a major highway running through that neighborhood. I mean, that's redlining right there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it will just open, other people's eyes and recognize hey, let's level the playing field. Okay. Mm-hmm. Black people, we're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a hand up, level the playing field so everybody can start on the same level. Now it is your choice to see how far you can go up that level. Just lay it flat where everybody else is instead of we have somebody got a little advantage, maybe more than advantage, something like that. And we're trying to get up to that advantage.
one of my favorite sayings is that we should be very thankful that people of color just want equality and not revenge.
Oh,
I've seen that. Yes.
Yes, my grandfather would say that all the time. He said, you better be glad that we're just angry and not out for revenge.
Yeah.
You know, I think so when we talk about good things about teaching
reparations.
Hold on, Curtis. What were you saying, Tiff?
Well, I think so. You asked what are some good things about teaching the actual history of this country and with all its horrors that have happened. So I was listening to a historian speak, and she was talking about she was writing a book on women in the Civil War, and why would you learn about women in the Civil War? They didn't fight the Civil War. Well, it turns out women had an integral role in the Civil War, and actually trying to understand the Civil War without women. Without this, wasn't telling a picture that was accurate. And so to me, I think that's a nice analogy here. Like, if we try to look at this country without African Americans, what happened to them, who they are, what they've built, it's like it's not telling an actual picture. And when you think about the human power that is lost because Black schools are being starved out, like if we could feed Black schools, think of how many more brilliant cancer solving doctors could come out and amazing pilots and engineers, and instead that the wealthy white people are starving Black schools and trying to keep these brilliant people in poverty. It's hamstringing our nation.
I mean, you can tell, which ones, how politicians want a dumb country and they're dumb citizens, and
the fight against education.
Right. Don't want to be educated.
Yep. Nobody's going to arm you with overthrowing them.
There is this new concept out. I saw it on TikTok where this woman who was a telephony engineer, maybe. Anyway, she figured out that if we could target cell phones anywhere in the world into a single room among 30 other cell phones, that we should be able to do that with cancer. We should be able to target just like we do with cell phones. And I'm bringing this up because her final line the interviewer was like, "Oh my God, this is huge." And she sat back and said, "That's what you get when you mix Black girl magic with STEM."
See?
That's amazing.
It hit me so hard. It was this is why we need the education. This is why it needs to be a level playing field. This Black girl might have just solved a cancer problem, and our politicians want to silence that. They want to, like you said, Toof, not apply the funding, not apply any of that. I mean, we need... And when it boils down to it, that's what white supremacy is based on, is that the fear that people of color are better than us. I'm okay with that.
Well,
they're not.
And it's also a raw, naked lust for power.
Yes, it is.
That's what it is, more so than anything else. It is a raw, naked, unadulterated lust for power. We want to maintain the power. We want to increase our power.
And when they saw the 2020 census and saw that the Caucasian demographics was going down, and there were more colored people in this country, that's why they kind of want to overturn Roe versus Wade. But
it's an insecurity.
And you mean people of color, not colored people.
Right, people of color. Us brown people. There will be more brown people in this country.
Yeah.
Well, we are almost at the top of the hour. Is there any other comments or questions from the audience? What do you guys want to cover before we start to close out?
I don't know if we ever got to that one. What narrative can progressive liberal Dems use that could or push back against the GOP? I don't know if we talked about that very much.
No, I don't even think I saw that.
So that's a great question. We need to be ready to have this conversation, particularly with family members. I tell you what, if the last 4 years has done anything, it's make me realize how awful my family members are, how awful. Either they've gotten worse or they've been infected by this cancer, this cancer. but we need to be ready, emboldened. And I don't know if, like, very close relatives of mine who I grew up with, I can't even talk to anymore. I can't even look at them anymore because go ahead.
I think a lot of white people had, like, the last 4 years, a lot of awkward holiday gatherings and holiday dinners, because now they just
go to any of them.
Yeah, now they just realize that your favorite cousin is a, and they're like,
I literally am estranged from a cousin because he has 6 children, and I made a point of saying, holy crap, you're going to hit huge with Biden's child tax care credit.
That's it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why.
It sounds like you're better off.
And he went on a rant about. He went on a rant. I'm sure.
He got all of his friends, called me all of these names. How dare you say this? And I'm like, everybody's getting it. You have kids. You're getting it. Literally estranged from my cousins because of just stating that fact.
I could answer that, what that person asked. I got one thing to say, I think, that has helped me. I remember getting my teacher education, right? I went to become a teacher and I went through this. And I remember the professor saying, colorblind is bad. Saying I'm colorblind, that's bad. And I thought that was ridiculous when I was 18. What I think people need to understand that are still in this is that this idea that, I treat everybody the same, I look at everybody the same, that's actually deeply racist. Deeply, deeply racist.
Yes.
That's like me saying to my wife, and the example I use when I use this is men and women, because no white person will deny that women have a different walk on this planet than men. So they're willing to say, okay, I accept that. Like women need to, when they walk outside at night, they need to be afraid where men don't in a lot of places, right? It's a different world for women than it is men. When I use that, then I say, in the same way, it's a different world for African Americans than it is for white people, because white people I think a lot of them genuinely do not understand that Black people have a different life.
They don't understand.
They're followed in stores. They cannot until you open your ears and listen to what Black people are trying to tell white people. We can never do that. So I think one narrative you can use is trying to help them understand, look at the statistics. Black people's lives are different from white people's. And the minute you say, okay, I admit that, then the conversation can start.
I love that.
Well, they don't admit it because as a Black man, there are 1,000 microaggressions that I endure daily.
Yes.
Especially daily. At work.
At work.
Yeah, just by being a Black man. How many times are we, how many times have and I'm 64 years old. I can tell you there are 3 times in my life where I've been the only black person at my job. The only one. And like I said, that's just one example.
All boils down to ego, right? I mean, I do not believe in a Satan. I believe that our ego is what we call Satan. And when people think that they are better than, when people think that they know it all, when people refuse to learn and refuse to accept and admit their ignorance, that's where conflict starts. And I'm going to use what I did, before this show. I laid out my intro and then sent it to this panel to make sure I wasn't misspeaking, because I am a white woman and don't know. So I wanted to make sure that what I was saying was in line and right. Not having the fear of being ignorant enabled me to do so. So I think if we got over ourselves a little bit, lowered our egos down and said, okay, we've got a lot to learn about our neighbor, we've got a lot to learn about our brother, a lot of this shit would just go away, right?
You think.
Maybe that's just far too simplistic.
You think. And it's kind of like, why do white people have, hold a Black person when it comes to work or anything else especially at a job, at a higher standard than their other white coworker.
Racism.
You know, right.
Insecurity.
Exactly.
Wow.
See, we talk about white supremacy like it's a black people problem. White supremacy is not a black people problem.
That's not.
No, not at all. White supremacy is wholly a white person problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
White people have to start talking to white people about white supremacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Black people. That's not
right.
The Buffalo shooter. That no black person. There's nothing any black person could have told him or about anything. About anything.
Well,
so again,
Curtis, I agree with you. It is a white person problem, but the bigger problem is those who suffer from the problem are black people.
Yeah.
So it is a white people problem.
Absolutely.
But black people suffer. And so when white people aren't suffering, they don't want to change. Why change? This world is working perfectly. So I agree with you 100%, but how do we help white people empathize?
These people... And let me say this. This is part of the reason I was so excited that Toof was on the show, because I do believe that white people need to use their voices for this. And I think that the people who tend to deny their racism, who tend to say, oh, I've got black friends, don't want to hear what needs to be changed from black people anymore. Because then it turns into a bitch session. Then they're just complaining. You guys just want more. So in order for it to be taken seriously, we white people need to speak up. We need to say, this is where we're wrong. This is what we have done. So it isn't relegated to the dismissal that you guys incur every second of the day in this country.
Right.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Okay, well, that brings us to the top of the hour. Curtis, give us some final wisdom, and where can people find you if they want to talk to you, but give us some final words.
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Curtis B. Scruggs. The conversations like this are what's too fast, what's going to solve the problem. It's conversations like this among reasonable, rational, right-thinking people who are truly interested in change.
So I have the show. Thank you for saying that. Toof, where can people find you, and final words?
Sure. Toof Francis. So it's www.tooffrancismyname.com, or on Facebook. Feel free to friend me on Facebook if you like. Final words is, we can't give up. We can't stop. I mean, I just want to leave the country. I just want to run away with all of we are creeping towards fascism, and I just want to run away. But if we run away, the people who can't run away are going to suffer even more. So we can't give up and we can't stop. We have made progress. That's what I want to say. We have made progress and we can keep going.
Fine, I won't move to Costa Rica. Fine. Kim, close
Not yet anyway.
Okay, so you can find me. My name is Cami Beck on Facebook. I do have the Critical Race Theory page. I have to say, is like, everybody need to sit down and have this uncomfortable conversation. Okay, how many times we try to fix this country and all we do is put a band-aid on it and band-aid on it and band-aid on it? I mean, to me, it's getting to the point that I'm like my grandma says, like, we gonna have to go through some more dark times in order to get to the light. And I think this is the beginning. I mean, you saw what happened on January 6th in 2020. That's just the beginning.
Just the beginning.
So I don't know where this country is going. I hopefully, cross my fingers, get better, but I got a feeling it's not going to get any better. It's not.
Well, I can say that just this little bit of effort for this show hopefully we'll make things a little bit better. Education is key. And thank you all so much for your perspectives. I love you all so much. I'm going to send you backstage and I'll catch you on the other side.
Bye everybody. Take care.
Toof, I'm keeping you up. Another tough topic, another great show. I absolutely loved the conversation. I think that we covered a lot of things. Probably isn't the last show that we're going to talk about critical race theory, because it needs to be discussed as long as people are offering rhetorical isn't the right word, rhetoric bullshit out there, and dividing and conquering and keeping their power. But thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe, and follow along next week. I absolutely love you being here, and no matter what, walk in love all week. See you next week.